Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Elliot Grigg, which once again means we are in preview mode. But before we get into it, if you are watching this video and like all of our content, then please do subscribe to the channel. There's a little icon in the corner of this video right now, which you can click, and you will become a subscriber to the channel, where we've got you covered from all angles with boxing content almost on a daily basis, whether that be previews like this, reviews of fights, big fight breakdowns, reaction videos to boxing news, interviews with fighters as well, of course. So yeah, if you like all of that, then become a subscriber to the channel and you won't miss any of it. This video, as I mentioned, Elliot, is another preview where we're previewing a fight here in featherweight division, a world title fight for the IBF world featherweight title. A man that is we're a big fan of now on the channel. Luis Alberto Lopez defends his belt for the fourth time. This is his fifth world title fight in a row, and he defends it against Angelo Leo. As we like to do now, mate, we don't really get into much of the tail of the tape and kind of talking about the fight itself. Before we come on to our predictions and thoughts on the actual fight, we do like to talk about some pressing questions. As we've talked about at Lopez so many times in the featherweight division as a whole, mate, I feel like we've ranked the featherweight division about 5 to 10 times, so there's no point in doing that anymore. So I'm going to ask you, going to come at it from a different angle, mate, and just ask you, do you believe out of Luis Alberto Lopez's 4 previous world title fights and then this one, do you think this is perhaps, on paper anyway, his easiest to date?
Very good question. Thank you very much, Paul, for that eloquent introduction, as always. It's definitely up there with one of his easiest, I think. But I also feel like the last fight, the last one he had against, was it Abe, Ray Abe? I thought that was also potentially easier, frankly. I think it wasn't a punch. Both guys not necessarily punchers. The size, obviously, of Leo's a bigger fighter than him as well, also a bigger fighter than Lopez. I think that might play into it as well. But again, not a puncher. For me, the last two, out of the defenses, so you're looking at obviously Conn and Gonzalez, this one and the other guy previous that I mentioned, don't know if I say the name right, I'm not a connoisseur of him necessarily, but Ray Abe there. I think they're getting the last two have been progressively easier than seemingly than obviously Conlon and Gonzalez. So for me, I've actually got Leo as maybe a slight step up from the last one, who obviously Lopez KO'd in 8 rounds. How about yourself? Do you agree with me, or do you think you're going to go with actually this is the easiest? It's been slowly getting easier every single time.
I mean, yeah, mate, I suppose there's a few ways you can look at it. Obviously, the first one against Josh Warrington, nobody really knew who he was, and then he won that really well. Still a close fight, but he won it. I think it was in Leeds as well, in Josh Warrington's backyard, which is no easy thing to do. The Conlon one, obviously, not an easy first defence. Conlon, a big favourite there, a little marginal favourite in Belfast, put on an emphatic display. And as you mentioned, the Joey Gonzalez one, he's more of maybe of a name. A lot of people actually did fancy him to pull off the upset. Alberto Lopez beat him handily. Last time out, as you mentioned, back on the stoppage train against Ray Abe. And then this for me, yeah, I think on paper it's maybe on a par with Abbey, maybe a little bit more difficult. Obviously, Leo here is a former WBO super bantamweight world champion, and if you look at his only defeat was to Stephen Fulton, who was obviously a unified world champion at super bantamweight, I believe, before then obviously running into the one of the pound for pound greats in Naoya Inoue. So his one defeat on Leo's record is at a high level, but then you look at Lopez of late and think, yeah, this guy's an absolute demon at featherweight. I think for me to answer the question, I think on paper anyway, it never always works out the way you kind of think it does, I suppose. But I think on paper, this is certainly one of the more straightforward defenses for Luis Alberto Lopez. I mentioned there that we're kind of in agreement that it's one of the more straightforward defenses. But let's say he wins this fight. What's next? Does it have to be unifications for you? And if so, how do you feel that Lopez gets on against the 3 other champions? So that's obviously Nick Ball now, Ray Vargas, and Rafael Espinoza.
Oh, it's a delicious question. I think I'll take him in reverse order. So obviously Espinoza, power, isn't he? 25-0, 21 KOs. So obviously a decent fight, a decent proposition. I look at the guys he's fought. So Robsy Ramirez stands out on there. But a lot of tough opponents. But I think, I see that again as being a hell of a fight, an exciting fight. Obviously, what style Lopez brings as well. Again, a bit of a shootout. So for me, For me, I could even give that. I think it's honestly 50-50 who lands first. I really do. I can sit here. Lopez is kind of unconventional, isn't he? So you can sit there and go, well, does he catch him throwing from those crazy angles? Does he get caught himself? I'll just maybe slightly towards Lopez, but I'm not basing on anything really. I genuinely think that's a genuine 50-50 fight. Ray Vargas is interesting. Obviously, Vargas last time out fighting Nick Ball obviously has that loss to Shaki Foster as well. Quite a few, obviously, more miles on the clock, I suppose. 33 years old, 36 and 1-1 record. I actually give Lopez a good shot in there. I really do. I think Lopez actually win that fight against Ray Vargas. The next one, the last one, Nick Ball, that's the one for me, which is really, really exciting. I think, both men are not going to take a backward step there. And a bit like the Rafael Espinosa fight, it could come down to who lands first, but I actually think Nick Ball will beat him. I've got suspicions that, Nick Ball's shown the last. Every time I've seen Nick Ball, I think that guy is too small to be fighting, and he's fighting against. But he seems to have grit, determination, and power. And I feel like, again, it's a bit of a who lands first. But I feel like I've seen improvements in Nick Ball. I think Nick Ball's style actually could get the better of Lopez. So I'm actually going to go out of those three. I'm going to go Nick Ball victory. I'm going to go Vargas loss. So Alberto Lopez will beat Vargas. And I think Espinosa is pure 50-50. So I've gone 1-1 and a draw, Paul. What are you going with?
Yeah, mate. I think I definitely agree with you. I think, especially at this stage now, I think I would be backing Lopez to beat Ray Vargas, maybe even by stoppage. Just the way that you know the way Vargas fought against Nick Ball, and let's be honest, Nick Ball could have won that the first time. Obviously, he did in his second world title fight against Ray Ford, but I'd back Lopez to beat Vargas. Espinoza, yeah, as you mentioned, for the Rubisi Ramirez fight, you're sitting going, I would have said Lopez wins that fairly convincingly, but then Espinoza's been in a great display against Rubisi Ramirez. Yes, Rubisi Ramirez not in his best night, but mate, I really can't agree with you. Can't disagree with you there. Like to pick him, I'd be one of those where I'd change my mind a few times before the fight. Right now, gun to my head, I'd probably back. Oh, Espinoza. I'm gonna go Espinoza. I'm gonna go Espinoza just because I've
Tough
just,
one,
yeah,
yeah.
again, as you said, no real reasoning, just a gut feeling. And then the Nick Ball one, provided Nick Ball could you know get out of the way of Lopez's big shots, as you mentioned, really unorthodox fighter, throwing shots from all angles, his knees, his ankle, the red corner, the blue corner. He's just throwing shots from all angles. I think the thing there that would play into Nick Ball's favor would be his gas tank and his engine. Just formidable engine, does not stop. I think, he maybe have to come through a few hairy moments in that fight, Nick Ball, but I would maybe back Nick Ball to win that on points. So you and I are maybe in theory saying that Nick Ball could be the best featherweight in the world, mate, but I suppose that's a discussion for another video. Coming back to the fight this weekend in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Saturday, 10th of August. How does it go down? Luis Alberto Lopez, Angelo Leo, who gets their hand raised and how?
Thank you very much, Paul. I think I'm going to go Lopez here. Obviously, we've mentioned that the defense might not be one of the more marquee defenses, and we're talking about him in those European in those unification fights where we're actually giving him chances to compete at that level. So really to come through opponents like Angelo Leo. But I think Angelo, you look at his record, quite a tough guy. He's never been stopped. So I think in a way I actually can see this being Lopez, but I can see it being Lopez on points. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not actually convinced he's going to stop Leo, but I think he'll prove victorious. It'll be a point decision victory over 12 rounds.
Yeah, mate, can't really disagree. I think Lopez is going to win. I'll maybe just say, yeah, we're high on Luis Alberto Lopez. I'm going to go for a late stoppage. I think to be competitive enough early on, but Lopez kind of doing enough. And I just think the way he throws his shots, like as Leo might get tired later in the fight and having taken a few early on, can be difficult for him to maybe see the final bell. So I'm going to go a little bit earlier than you and go, yeah, I think Lopez wins somewhere around 10, 11, 12 stoppage. I'll go the last three rounds, he'll stop Angelo Leo. So yeah, but let's hope the fight lives up to it and that after this we do get unifications, undisputed fights down the line, whatever. Guys, let us know your thoughts on this fight. Who do you think wins? Do you think this is Luis Alberto Lopez's easiest world title defense? Do you think we're being unfair on Angelo Leo there? How did he get on in all the unifications against the fighters we've mentioned, or even other top fighters in the division against, such as Rubisi Ramirez, my man Brandon Figueroa, and so on and so forth? Let us know your thoughts. All that's left for me to say is, Elliot, thanks very much for joining me, mate. I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Paul. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching.